And like, not like war bad, but like bad, for the people anyway. So the kings were no longer able to protect the people, which led to decentralization, which led to the feudal system, which was good for some people and bad for others. So at the top you had the kings. And then you had the lords, also known as the vassals. And then you had the peasants. And then you had the serfs. Now the serfs, they had it probably the worst. That's because they were at the bottom. If you imagine this as a pyramid, they're at the bottom and everyone else is like being supported by them. Yeah, they were those people. So the serfs, they weren't technically they were legally bound to the land, but they weren't technically slaves. However, they couldn't do anything or switch locations or marry anyone outside their lord's domain without asking the lord first. So basically the lord dictated what they did, even though they didn't own them. Now the peasants were a step up. They were slightly in better conditions because they weren't bound to the land, but didn't get much better than that. Now the lords and vassals, they owned the land, given to them most likely by the kings, or in some cases, there were lords that had a lot of land that gave them to the vassals. Now the kings couldn't rule if they didn't have vassals to support them, which is what happened when James I was made sign the Magna Carta because he lost the support of his vassals. So if you're a king, or in some cases a lord, and you lose the support of your vassals, bad things happen. So, since we're talking about Italy, or Europe, Italy is in Europe, we may as well talk about Christianity, which also was in Europe. So, at the head of the Catholic Church, you have the Pope. And the Pope controlled the Papal States in Italy, which were somewhere deep. So that was owned and controlled by the Pope. Now the Pope, or most popes, wanted to create a kingdom, a united kingdom of all of Europe called Christendom. That didn't happen, but they kept it. And so if this ever did come about, the Pope would be at the head, and everyone else would be under it, which means that the kings and emperors and whoever else would go under the Pope, which meant the Pope ruled them, which meant the Pope ruled everything. And the Catholic Church was very rich because they owned a lot of land. And they could force peasants to pay something called a tithe, which was a tax to his church on land that they owned. Or not owned. Anyway. And yeah, so you have the feudal system, which wasn't good for the majority of the population. You had the tithe, which was a huge tax, which also wasn't good for the people. And then we had like stuff going on. Anyway, yeah. In France, there were some French kingdoms which were brought together and called the Carolingian Empire. And so you had Pepin, who enlarged the empire and made it pretty big, and his son, Charlemagne, turned it into the Holy Roman Empire. And Charlemagne created a period of peace for the Holy Roman Empire, and he was also crowned emperor, because it was holy and Roman. So he wanted to take on that name and hopefully be as successful as Rome. But as you know, no one has ever been as successful as Rome before. So the Vikings, which began somewhere in this area, conquered and pillaged most of coastal Europe and the Mediterranean. They had really good ships, and if you've ever seen one, they have like these really cool maxes that look like sea monsters or dragons. Yeah, so I wonder where the myths about those came from. Anyway, so the Vikings set up some centralized kingdoms in Italy and France, and one of the descendants from the Frankish Vikings was William the Conqueror. And William the Conqueror did indeed conquer a lot. But one of the main things he conquered was England. And this was really important because William the Conqueror had, since he was descended from the Vikings in France, it created blood ties and feudal obligations with the English and French. throne, which was not good. It was just not good. And so, there's a lot of arguments between France and England. They can never agree on everything. And I don't know if they were ever even on the same side of it anymore. Anyway, yeah. Today we're going to talk about England. And England's pretty cool. And England was also pretty advanced. So England became centralized. And they had checks and balances, which is pretty cool because during this time that was like kind of unheard of. Like, I don't know, just like happened. And it also had something that would help them later called the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta put some limits on the king's power and also reinforced the fact that the king's power was not, in fact, permanent and unlimited. So that was a good thing for the people of England to be reminded of. The Magna Carta also gave rise to Parliament, which would also be very important later in the government of England. Because England is currently a parliamentary monarchy, so that's pretty cool.